supporters of the Ukrainians, both financially and militarily. The United States provides intelligence and a few other things, but it's really now Europe's war already. And we're moving in a direction when Europe will also be separate in other ways as well. And I think I don't think that's going to change. In fact, both Carney and Ursula von der Leyen, who's the president of the European Commission, both used this word permanent. We've had a permanent change. In other words, it's not going to go back if there's a different president. It's not going to change if President Trump once again changes his tone, which he often does. This is a permanent change, and we need to think differently about the role of Europe in the world.
Separately from Europe and from our transatlantic alliances, you wrote recently in The Atlantic about this idea of American dominance that we hear from President Trump, this apparent return to the policy of spheres of influence, right, where major powers sort of dominate their own backyards and neighborhoods. You wrote in that piece, far from making us more powerful, the pursuit of American dominance will make us weaker, eventually leaving us with no sphere and no influence at all. As we're marking the first year of the second Trump presidency, what are you taking away about how this president views America's place in the world?
So there is sometimes a conflict between what President Trump says and what his advisors say, so you have to be careful about talking about a Trump doctrine or Trumpism. Trump himself I don't think, has a strategy. He's interested rather in winning each conflict as it comes along. But clearly there are people around him who believe that the role of the United States in the world should be to dominate the Western Hemisphere, to dictate the way the countries in our hemisphere work, who they trade with, who they're allowed to associate with, maybe even determine what kind of governments they have, and that should be the role of the United States in the world. And this is in the understanding, I think, of Trump himself and also of, again, some people around him. This is good, that they need allies, that allies are a burden, they're a cost, and they won't help us. As I said, if you look at the world that America built after the Second World War, the degree to which it was peaceful and the degree to which it helped America become prosperous was largely based on the fact that we had these allies, we had these alliances, we had countries who were loyal to us not because they were afraid of us, but because they felt that we had shared values. This is actually the first president since 1945 who doesn't see himself as a leading Democrat leading another group of democracies. He's not interested in that idea at all.
Picking up on that idea, what does all this mean for America as a democracy? I mean, you have studied and written extensively on autocracies around the world and throughout history. You warned previously about a potential democratic decline being set into motion in President Trump's second term. How do you look at where we are now?
So there is a connection between foreign policy and domestic policy. For many years, the fact that the United States led democracies in the world, or described itself doing that, sometimes we failed, but we talked about doing that. Democracy was at the heart of our foreign policy. It was the heart of our national identity. Now that that's no longer true, then what is America? What does it mean to be American? There are other competing ideas now. Maybe to be American means to be a white heritage American, meaning that you're descended from somebody who came over on the Mayflower or the rough equivalent. Maybe it means being part of a Christian nationalist movement. Maybe they're the real Americans. And so the emphasis on democracy and the role that democracy played in our national sense of who we are has really begun to diminish, and that has a foreign policy face and it has a domestic policy face. The value of democratic institutions, of courts, of a neutral and meritocratic civil service, all those things were part of what made American democracy, and we now have, as I said, first administration in a long time, at least certainly at the federal level, who didn't think those things were important and rather sought to politicize those institutions, to make them partisan, to change their nature, and in some cases to undermine them. And that has made us into a different country. We see ourselves differently, and others see us differently now as well.
That is journalist and historian Anne Applebaum, host of The Atlantic's Autocracy in America podcast. Anne, thank you. It's always good to speak with you.
Thank you.
Wait just a second, we have one more thing to share.
We want to say a heartfelt thank you for watching and supporting PBS News.
Without you, we simply wouldn't be able to provide the news and the information that you trust.
So thank you from everybody here at PBS News.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.
Colleen Shogan made history when she became the first woman to serve as Archivist of the United States in 2023, until February, when President Trump fired her with no warning or reason given. Now, Shogan has a new challenge, which she unveiled during our exclusive interview. Today, Constitution Day, she launched a national bipartisan effort, part of an alliance of 34 presidential centers and some 100 groups called More Perfect, working to strengthen our democracy. This report is part of our series Art in Action, exploring the intersection of art and democracy, and part of our Canvas Arts coverage.
At Lincoln's Cottage in Washington, D.C., Colleen Shogan knows history has its eyes on her. As the nation prepares to mark 250 years, she's working to steer it back on track with what she calls a civics education moonshot.
What is the problem that you see needs fixing right now?
I think we have a crisis with civics education in this country. We know some of the statistics are alarming. About 22% of our nation's 8th graders are proficient in civics education. We also know that 70% of Americans, adults, would be unable to answer the basic questions on a civics or history test.
When you say that many Americans can't answer basic questions, what kind of questions are we talking about?
Something like how many branches of government are in the United States, or which branch of government is responsible for writing the laws, questions like that.
Shogan, who's helped to lead nonpartisan groups from the Library of Congress to the White House Historical Association to the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission, is now spearheading a new national project to help fill that civics void. Called In Pursuit, it calls upon former presidents and first ladies like the Clintons, Bushes, and Obamas, historians and thought leaders, including multiple Pulitzer Prize winners, and journalists, including our own Judy Woodruff, each contributing an essay about a president or first lady. An idea born from Shogan's time leading the National Archives.
I visited all of the presidential libraries when I was the Archivist of the United States, and what I